Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Perspectives. I'm your host, Patrice Bobo-Miles. And Donna and I had a great interview the first time we talked, and I don't know how long we talked after we stopped recording, at which point in time I said, you got to come back. And so she very graciously has agreed to come back because there were just so many. Y'all just don't know all of what Donna does. I mean, you just don't know. And I really wanted to have a chance just to kind of delve into some of the stuff that's not necessarily real estate related. I know I've had a lot of real estate professionals on here. I know we've talked about different avenues of real estate investing, and we've talked about money management. We've talked about a whole lot of stuff. And when Donna was telling me about designing your life and what that mentor program is, I got to tell you, it really kind of, something went off in my head. And I'm like, we have got to talk about this. And so, Donna, I appreciate you coming back again this week. And I'm going to ask you, like I did the last time, if you could just give a really quick, who are you and what do you do?
Certainly. So I'm Donna Page. I am what I consider a lifestyle strategist and, of course, real estate investor. Patrice, I have had a varied life over these last 50 plus years. And in doing so, I've just learned a lot of different strategies for really creating the life of my dreams. So I became a widow in 2016 when my husband just passed away suddenly, and as a result it was important to me that I continue to live a life that brought him honor. So a lot of what I've been doing over the last 8 9 years, or I'm sorry, 7 to 8 years, has been to basically recreate who I am outside of just being Aubrey's wife. So now I am a bonus mom or a super aunt, in that I take full time care of my little 7-year-old niece, as well as stepping into the role of caregiver as my parents start to age. So that's who I am today. But I've certainly had a very varied path to get here.
I want to go back a little bit because you and Aubrey were married for how long?
20 years, 20 amazing years. Yes.
And it we're fortunate
Yes.
and that we've been able to have that kind of person in love, right? In our love, that just undying support. I mean,
Absolutely.
I can go totally off left field, and my husband's like, "Oh, honey, yeah, if that's what you want to do,"
Yes.
and but it's a real support and it's a real partnership.
Yes.
And like you said, there were 20 wonderful years, but take me back if you can to the day that he passed.
Certainly. So, we were together 23 years, dated a year, got engaged, or dated a year, moved in together, got engaged, and then got married, right? And of course, they weren't all, it wasn't always a bed of roses, but it was always our choice. It was always what we wanted, right? So the day that he passed away, it was a Monday morning. I'll never forget. We'd had a phenomenal weekend. We'd had house guests that came in, threw a really great party on Saturday, recovered on Sunday. So Monday morning, getting ready to go to work at NASA, and I'll never forget. I was going out for a jog. He pulled out of the driveway. I blew him a kiss. He blew me a kiss in the rearview mirror. I blew him a kiss back, drove around the corner. I go, taking a quick jog around the lake. Well, about 20, 30 minutes later, I get a call from his office saying, Donna, Aubrey is non-responsive. Has he been ill? What's going on? And unfortunately, on his way up to his office, he suffered a blood clot that got to the brain, and it was basically what's called a widowmaker. The doctors believe that he probably was gone before he hit the ground. So I'm running around the lake. I called my best friend. We meet them at the hospital. They absolutely do everything that they can, but the Lord had called him home. And it was 11 days after my 46th birthday. So certainly, relatively young. Had been with this man since I was 23 years old. We built this amazing life. And by lunchtime, he was gone. So,
Wow. Wow. How did you find it in you to kind of pick up and start to move forward from that?
well, Patrice, if I can be completely transparent, I didn't choose that. I didn't choose that. I genuinely believed that my heart too would just stop working. And so initially, my goal was, I was stunned. And luckily, I had this incredible community that came in and undergirded me and got me through the whole process of honoring his life. And so, staying busy that way really helped. But I sat on my sofa for a minute and I just waited for the Lord to take me home. I thought, I could not imagine life without this man. And it took a while. And because of my faith, I didn't, want to do anything to hurry that along, but I just knew that God would bless me to heaven. That's how I kept saying that. And finally, I came to the realization that that wasn't going to happen. And it was still important to me to honor Aubrey's life because we had lived so well together. And I don't mean that just from a financial perspective or what success looks like from the outside, but I mean loving out loud and living that type of example before people. And so I fell back on what I knew. I'd had a very, very successful career as an interior designer prior to choosing to come home to support our family domestically as a housewife. And so really my brain was traumatized. I had PTSD. I just fell back into design. But instead of designing rooms, I used the exact principles that I had taught students for several years as a university instructor when I taught them how to design spaces. I used those same tools to design a life. And that's how this entire process got started.
Isn't it amazing how out of some of our darkest times, we're able to really find that ability to be a shining example. I know that was a really corny metaphor. However, but I mean, it's the truth. And in listening to you talk, what you're saying is your initial purpose was how can you honor what was your life with Aubrey, right? And so certainly only something beautiful could be able to grow from what that was because you guys, as you said, you lived and loved out loud. And so many people are afraid to do that, to love that freely, to live that loudly. And so as you kind of transitioned into this designing your life, give me a little bit of insight and what were those first kind of, I might be able to, this might be able to help someone else. What did that look like?
So the funny thing is, it was never my intention to share this with the world. This was literally my lifeline out of the darkness. It was the only way I could see myself getting from that really hurtful, dark place that I was in to the other side of light so that I could bring honor to his life. And I literally did it for myself. At the time, I had a amazing support system. As I mentioned before, my very best friend had literally moved into my home to make sure that she was just physically there and I would be okay. And then I also had an amazing assistant who too stepped in and kind of took care of the both of us because my best friend's husband was my husband's best friend. So we were all grieving as a community, and they saw what I was doing for myself and I decided to share with them. Part of it, I think they were sort of indulging me and indulging what I was doing at the time to keep me busy, but it was very effective. And again, I would love to be able to say that I had the foresight to know that this was something that would be able to help others. I did it. Life just happened that way, and I'm grateful that it did. And because I was, I had to sort of get everything out of my head onto paper in order to help Yolanda and Martika. It literally created this program. And then I was given the opportunity when people saw that I was healing in a different way than they were accustomed to seeing most widows heal. They started asking, what are you doing? And then I started hosting the vision board parties, and it sort of took on a life of its own. And finally, I guess the big break, so to speak, which again, I wasn't looking for it. I was asked to share this information with in a faith-based setting. And so, again, kind of tying the scriptures back, it just made sense. And because I had the academic background, I thought, well, this will be a great book. Let me write this as a book. Still didn't want to teach it, didn't want to coach, wasn't thinking about helping other people in that way. Just wanted to get the information out. So that's how Life by Design was born.
So how does it work?
Yeah, so I did write a book, and the funny thing is I have not made the book available for mass consumption because I just it's not it's still very tender for me. But I do present the information in group settings, so I'm often asked to come in to speak to large, to speak at workshops or conferences and seminars and things of that nature, and I'll do that. There's a program, I have a workbook, and I'll always make the materials available for that. But over the last 4 years, I have started to do small group coaching and one-on-one coaching, which has really proven to be quite gratifying, quite frankly. Initially, I was working a lot with widows just because I was called to do that.
Mhm.
But as I've sort of grown in other avenues, I've, very subtly allowed, kind of shared that this is what I do with different audiences. And so people will contact me. We'll usually do a couple cohorts a year. Usually it's about a 12-week cohort of about 12 to 16 women, depending upon where we are. And we just go through the material. We act as accountability partners for one another. And then in all of that, I've also had people that have reached out to work one-on-one. And so I will actually help them on a more personalized basis as a mentor, coach, and life strategist. And I really love that work, Patrice. But, again, I'm kind of careful about who I work with, and I want to always be able to provide maximum value. So it's not something that that I have on a website that people can sign up for, because it's just that's not really my goal.
Well, not everybody, a lot of people say they are stuck. They want to make changes. They want to do whatever.
Yes.
But they don't want to do the work.
Yes. Yes.
Because the work is hard.
Yes.
It is hard work. It is
absolutely.
hard work.
And I found that. I think that sometimes, and I do recognize, having done this work again for over 6 years now, I recognize that sometimes it takes a while for our head and our heart to meet. And that's really okay. But because I do have other responsibilities, I just don't have the time always to work with everyone when, they're not quite there yet. And that's why I do have the materials that are available for people that want to work at a different pace. But when I have that young lady or that young man that's ready to make do everything that they need to do, they're ready to invest the time, energy, and effort in getting it done. Those are the people, and they're teachable. Because that's another issue.
Mm-hmm.
We're not always there. But if you're teachable and you're ready, then we can work.
So modules is I guess the term I'll use for lack of a better term. And looking at the breadth of what this is, roughly how many modules do you have in place, and what do they kind of cover?
Sure. So there's actually there are 8 modules, and we basically use this life sphere sort of concept. So we want to make sure that we are, very well balanced all the way across our sphere. So our very first module is living life on purpose. And so it basically walks us through, how do we recognize what our life's purpose is? And I work with the participants in identifying their vision, because quite often what I found, Patrice, is a lot of people really don't have a vision for their life. They just kind of go through and react to whatever happens. So we set the foundation by casting the vision and then identifying our life's purpose. And then the next thing that we work on is our time management. So that chapter is in the book is entitled Making Time for What Matters. And we really do delve deeply into managing every aspect of our day, which is why calendaring is so critical. And so I live by a calendar. That's a little inside joke. The next thing we do is money, because right now we've cast the vision. We know what God is, or whatever our higher power or even our own soul is calling out for us to do. We get our calendar together, then we have to figure out how we're gonna pay for everything, right? And so getting that money together, getting a budget in place, figuring out how we can actually earn more money so that we can live the life that matters to us. That's the third thing. Number 4 is assembling your dream team. And that has everything to do with who we choose to voluntarily spend our time with and how. And that's a really fun chapter, because again, some of our relationships we may have either outgrown, or we just haven't been as intentional about building relationship with other people who might be exactly that missing piece that we need in order to move forward. The next one is minding the business that pays you. And that's basically, getting really clear about our career path, and or if there's any entrepreneurial aspirations that we have, we come up with a plan, again, for those to come to pass. The next one is recognizing that health is wealth. So we talk a lot about our physical bodies, our mental health, as well as our emotional well-being. The next one is image and personal branding, because we do want to be able to show up in the world as we've envisioned in our head. And again, we're not always as intentional about doing that. And it's not just about being pretty, it's about everything, how we speak, just how we show up. And then lastly, from house to home. And that really is making sure that we're creating an environment that supports everything that we've worked towards. So it is a holistic process and a holistic program. For some people, there may be areas that they're just knocking it out of the park, for. So they may not want to work there, do as much work in that area. But then for other people, there's some things that we may have just completely let fall off the radar. And so, yeah, that's the program.
I absolutely love this. And I'm writing notes and not wearing my glasses. So this is good because I don't want ring lights in my eyes. Talk about transparent, right? But I want to go into just a couple of things.
Yeah.
When you find yourself working with, whether it's a one-on-one or it's a client situation, I know everybody's strengths and weaknesses are different because, we're all individuals at that point. But is there a common thread sometimes that you see that runs through, the people that you're choosing to work with?
Absolutely. So oftentimes, most people come to me because there's a pain point, and it's usually around a transition in life. So it could be, a change in their lifestyle or their marital status, or kids are moving home, or maybe they're taking care of aging parents, or their career has, they've been involuntarily separated from their chosen career path. It could be a myriad of things, but I often find that vision casting is usually where most people have just missed the mark. And so they're feeling untethered. They often feel almost a sense of hopelessness because they really haven't sat down to cast the vision and to identify their life's purpose. So that's one that's really big. Dealing with people. So getting that dream team together is usually something that when we really start to think about it, and we're not telling you to throw people away. We're not telling you to, not be kind to your family. But sometimes, I find that for most of us, really, there's always an opportunity to be more intentional about building relationships with people that are either in alignment with where you are or going where you'd like to go. So that's always one that tends to resonate really deeply with most of the people that I work with. And then finally, that money piece, Patrice, because we're all making money, but we're not all living in a manner that reflects our vision and reflects the the lifestyle that we'd like to have. So just getting clear about that piece, I think, is also something that generally resonates across the board. And it doesn't have anything to do with net worth or earnings or income. It's just being incredibly clear and intentional about how we use our money. So those would probably be the top three.
I love it. I was in a conversation yesterday with someone, and money was part of the topic, and they said, I just want peace of mind, and money doesn't buy you peace of mind. And I said, money is not the key to all happiness. And this conversation certainly shows the importance of having a well-rounded life. However, I always say this: money doesn't buy us happiness, but it does afford us options.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And there's nothing wrong with options.
What it also does, Patrice? It gives direction to how our lifestyle will go. Again, it's not always about the income, and it's not always that we need more money. We often need to be more conscientious in how we direct those, those resources. And so it won't buy us happiness unless boating makes you happy. Boating makes me happy. Living off the beach makes me happy. I can't do that if I don't have any money, right? But I also don't want to give the money to Dillard's when I could be giving it to, my HOA in Mexico. So
there is that.
It provides us options. And
there is that. So let's talk a little bit about interpersonal relationships.
Yes.
um, because those are key. I have found over the years, and certainly, it's amazing the older you get, how sometimes that clarity falls in, right?
Yes.
But I have found that there are people that have been in my life and they're not necessarily reflective. I'm trying to find a nice way to say this. Can you see that?
Absolutely.
They're definitely not reflective of who I am now,
Yes.
and where I am now. People that you've known your entire life,
Hmm.
they've got to see you go through all the mess,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
They've got to see you at your absolute best. They've seen you at your absolute worst.
Yes.
And they've seen all of the stupid shit
Mhm.
that you've done in between then and now.
Mhm.
And so that perception that they carry of you may not necessarily be who you are now at this point in time. And so how do you help people navigate putting a healthy distance? And again, not getting rid of anybody, not cutting anybody off, not doing any of those things,
Mhm.
but creating that healthy distance so that you're making sure that you're protecting your space, yourself.
I think it comes down, Patrice, to becoming really, really clear about how we're spending the time, right? So we're not necessarily running the streets with those people. And especially if they're a placeholder, I think we've all over time, as you mentioned, there are some relationships that we have that held value, but perhaps we've evolved in a different way than they have. But they still have value in our life. So we deal with them sort of accordingly. We allow them to be in our life in a way that makes sense, that reflects and honor the value that they bring to us, but we don't allow them to take up space where they just don't belong, right? Where they're not really lending any real value. We still want to, again, honor who they are as human beings. We don't want to, again, throw people away, but it really doesn't do them any good either to be outside of their lane. Now, the
Mhm.
people who are just placeholders, people that you just have, like maybe you worked with them 15 years ago and you're still gossiping about stuff that happened at the phone company, that's the person that maybe stay connected to them on social media, but we're not picking up the phone and spending 45 minutes every week, talking about what happened last Thursday or the negative things that happened, that's going on in their life that doesn't resonate. I think a lot of it has to do with just recognizing who they are and where they belong in your life.
It's interesting. Before we ever connected, before we ever met each other, I had to go through a lot of what that
Mhm.
journey is, right? And that's why I said it's hard work.
Oh,
It is
absolutely.
hard work. Because there are things that you have to look at and face in yourself that you don't like, right? And if you don't like them, certainly no one else likes them.
Certainly.
And it's just kind of looking back on some of the stuff, maybe the not so good stuff, and just going, oof,
Hmm.
but working through what that is. And so, how, as you're working, whether it's one on one or whether it's in a group, how do you help somebody push past that and maybe not let that take up space in their head so that they can get that forward momentum, that growth, that step, that level up?
So I think that the key is grace. It's grace towards ourselves. It's grace for not doing better when we didn't know better, but it's also accountability for doing better because we know better, right? So we have to look back and offer ourselves and others grace for just doing the very best that we could and that they could during that time. And I think that's also key to disconnecting in a healthy manner, right? It's not making someone be bad or wrong because we've evolved differently. Their time is coming, and really, we want to get out of their way so that they can connect with people who resonate with where they are and where they'd like to go. But we also have to do that for ourselves. We can't sit back and say, "Oh, I know better than to date him." Well, at the time, for whatever reason, he needed to be there to serve a purpose, right? And it's not to excuse poor decision making, we look at it, we, figure out why we made the decision, and we just do better. We choose better. Like, we don't have to hold ourselves hostage to the past or hostage to the decisions that we made when we just were not ready to make a different decision. So it comes down to grace.
Yeah. And well, there's an emotional maturity,
Yes.
obviously, that comes with deciding to make some of those sweeping changes in your life to better
Yes.
what that position is. I absolutely love it.
Mhm.
Tell me a little bit about vision casting. It's a term that you used a little bit ago.
Absolutely. So vision casting is really going inside and tapping into the soul, tapping into your intuition, um, getting into your mind's eye and really sitting in a place where you can see yourself at your very best and very highest. And so for some of us, that's easier than others, right? So some people, we can sit back and we can say, at my best, I look this way, I feel this way, I have these things, I serve in this manner. And for some people, they can feel it, they can see it, and they can execute. We teach you exactly how to execute. But for others, maybe they just don't know. Maybe they've never had the opportunity to go that deeply inside. And so we do things like vision boards, which I think, as cliche as they are and as common as they are, I really do believe that they help us to see on a sort of a spiritual but not religious perspective what our conscientious mind won't allow us to see. So literally finding images, whether it's watching podcasts or listening to podcasts and things resonate with you, I always say, write those things down or get a visual representation of that and see if it tells a story. My experience has been it always tells a story, and generally it will lead you to what your soul is crying out for. And so vision casting, I think, is critical because it really helps us to decide on, do we do this or not, right? Are we making this decision or not? Does this support the vision that felt good when I sat with myself, when I prayed, when I asked for guidance? Does this align itself with that? And it makes it easy to make those decisions that do, and to turn away from what does not.
I find it interesting in that, in what you're saying, because, we talked a little bit offline last week, and I said, I got to a point where I just felt like I was drifting, right?
Yes.
No real purpose. I walked away from mortgages after 26 years, and it was time. And sometimes things they present themselves, and it's time to let something go. And I didn't necessarily know which way I was going to go. I had started podcasting, but I hadn't become consistent for a number of reasons because, there are always excuses, right? And I still come back to God. We sit, we pray. I pray to God. I don't know who anyone else prays to. You're welcome to what that is for you.
Yes.
And I know that He was dropping answers. I know He was dropping answers. I know, things had been affirmed and reaffirmed. I don't know how many times. And I would look at him and go, you sure? No, that couldn't possibly be so. No, I think I'm gonna keep asking you what you want, but I don't think I like that answer. How many times? And the long and the short of it is eventually I said, okay.
Okay, Jonah.
It's like, okay, I hear you. I got it. That's what we're gonna do. But how many times do you run into people who have that sort of reluctance to trust in what that higher power is telling them?
Oh, Patrice, it's all of us. It's all the time. It happens because our humanity will crash against our spirit, right? And so we want what we want because our rational mind believes that we know what's best. And then there's a spiritual calling that is saying, trust me. And trust me it's not rational. Trust me is it's the polar opposite of rationality, right? So it happens to us all. It happens to me, and I know better. I teach people better, and I still struggle with it in a lot of ways, but it's just an ongoing process. And that's where grace comes in, because eventually your intellect will kind of fall under submission to your spirit man, and you eventually will be obedient, do what you were led to do. And I promise, I'm 53 years old. I've not found a time in my life where my intuition or being led by the spirit and being obedient to spirit has led me wrong. It hadn't happened yet. So it's ridiculous that I don't trust it right away. But we wouldn't be human, right?
I'm so glad I'm not the only one.
Maybe we'd be walking on water if we did anything different. So just be gracious with yourself until you can be obedient more quickly.
I love it. I love it. And I thank you so much for coming in. This is so much kind of what I wanted to really talk about last week or last time. I think it was last week. But anyone who has watched the podcast knows that this is not a scripted. This is not scripted. It's not scripted. It's not edited. And the conversation just kind of goes where it goes. And so our last conversation just kind of went into real estate. I think it's something that we're both very comfortable with because it's what we know, like know in our sleep know.
Yes.
And it was a great conversation. I can't wait to send you the video from that. But I really wanted to get into this part of what you do, because a lot of people aren't aware of this aspect of what you do in this arena. So I'm grateful and thank you.
Thank you
for coming in and sharing this part of what you do, because I know it's not something you advertise at all. So the 5, 10, 20, maybe 100 people who watch this will now know.
Well, thank you for being a safe space. Because of the trauma that it was born out of, it's still very tender for me. And I'm really grateful, sincerely, that this was an opportunity for me to sort of introduce it to the greater world, not just my physical circle, not just my inner circle. But I appreciate you creating this environment for me to be able to share this with.
Well, I appreciate that you trusted me.
Thank you.
To come in and share this story. So thank you so much. And guys, that's Perspectives for the week. Again, I will have information as far as how to get a hold of Donna and her team. If this is something you think you have questions about. And as I end every podcast, your day is what you make it. So choose to make your day a great day.